Hello.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good, I'm good. You're currently upside down, so I'm just gonna find the best
All right.
position. Okay.
How, how is it now? Or I can do this actually.
Yes, there you go. That's perfect.
How you doing?
Friend. I'm very well. It's good to see you. I have to say, you're looking more clean shaven. Well, good haircut, better than my own, I have to say. So,
I really had to go for this because basically they were going mad, and I asked my wife to give me a hand on doing it, but the result was a bit like, not sure. So we went
well,
for we went for the proper one. But I'm trying to see what's going on in this side. But as you can tell, there is already a couple of white hair.
oh, phew. I mean, they'll come in time, you
Oh,
know.
33 very soon. I mean, whoa, not sure. How
Uh,
old are you?
I'm 31 actually.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, so February.
When we
Just
met,
before.
I wasn't 30 probably yet, and you were just probably around 20.
28, possibly, something like that. Yeah, it must have been because I remember I was down in London with a Belgian friend of mine.
I remember him.
Yes, yes. He still lives in Belgium, but he works for BrewDog as well now.
Oh, wow, okay. But is,
Yeah.
is BrewDog in Belgium?
Yes, BrewDog Brussels he
Wow.
was.
Okay, so that's interesting because I would love really to see how consumers and people will perceive a BrewDog in the land of the Belgian beers, and that would be interesting.
Very true indeed. It's actually, I would say, one of the most beautiful locations that I've been to. They
Okay.
have an outdoor terrace that just sort of blows it out of the water.
Oh wow. And
Talking about water, actually, if you give me one moment, I'll be back.
yo, I'm getting my beer. Just give me 1 second.
Amazing.
Right. I think I'm gonna try to explain you pretty much what's happening here in the meantime.
Okay.
Digital. Shall I do a little speech? Shall I just a second? Would you
Yes.
mind?
Yes. No. No. Of course.
Brilliant. So basically, my name is Gabs, and I started Digital Beer Stream like as a way to fight the boredom of the lockdown, and we've been through 10 weeks already. So this is the 11th week and 41 episodes yet. Please check it out. There are interesting, topic that we touched so far. And for this week, which is double IPA week, I really wanted to have a good balance between people that are really, into it, like breweries like Verdant, which are making, these
Sure.
kind of big juicy IPAs for all of us, and a good balance of people that maybe can let you think about the actual words where the double IPAs are taking shape and shaping our taste and our habits as drinkers. So definitely Ashbo's perfect for this kind of discussion because I'm aware is a craft beer person, as someone that works into the industry from a fair long time. But in the meantime, is your vision is wider than just craft beer and that kind of craft beer, which is what I was looking for.
True indeed. And I mean, what a fantastic introduction as well, really. So I can also talk a little bit about sort of, I guess, my history with craft beer.
Please do it.
Thank you, thank you. So I've been in the craft beer industry now about 6 years. It all sort of started for me when I began at a place called Six Degrees North, which is a Belgian style beer
Okay.
bar in Aberdeen. They specialized in pretty much their own beers, but then also had one of the largest ranges of Belgian beers I had seen, really, up until that point, and probably still. So after that, I worked there for about 4 years, actually. I think I was still working there when I met you down in London as well.
Yep.
I was a very young and passionate beer drinker. Yeah. And interestingly enough, did not drink many double IPAs, did not drink many hazies, did not drink, pretty much it was Belgian style. And I loved it, you know, because there was something very special. I think for me, what gripped me in terms of the passion for craft beer was during that period. It was learning something new, you know, learning what yeast was for the first time, you know, trying to understand that there was just this bacteria that's alive and somehow converts, you know, sugar and water into alcohol. I couldn't really put my head around it. And then when I could, it led me on to, you know, aging beer, led me on to lambics, led me on to quadruples, you know, and then came traveling as well, being able to travel with craft beer in terms of just the variety of places you can sort of travel and see, you know. Belgium was one of my first, Brussels, and it was an amazing experience. Since then, I've pretty much drunk craft beer, you know, very widely over Europe. And then, yeah, a few in other countries as well. So in my actual photo that I sent you, I'm trying to remember the name of the beer, but it's while I was in Sierra Leone, where I'm half Sierra Leonean, half Caribbean. My dad's essentially a Rasta, so he's on the Caribbean side. But yeah, I would say sometimes in those countries, unfortunately, the beer's a little bit limited. But anyway, to skip past that, I worked for 4 years. While I was there, I did a lot of tastings. I did some tours. A lot of this I would sort of organize myself with the support of essentially the bar and the management team. And then I moved to BrewDog. So I've been at BrewDog now, actually, on that note.
There we go.
Oh, yes. BrewDog now, actually. So BrewDog has now changed. This is the Hazy Jane. This is not the old school Hazy Jane.
Because I remember that.
Yeah, so the old school Hazy Jane is 7.2, I believe. This is their revamped Hazy Jane, so slightly lower in ABV at 5%. You're getting very much similar flavors coming through, tropical flavors, hops, you know, but yeah, it's a little bit more sessionable, you know.
Right.
So yeah, and actually you can just pretty much order on the app if you're in the area. Aberdeen, that is. So after 2.5 years, I did my CBS, which is the Cicerone. So I began that. That's pretty much like company-wide, they'll try to do that. So I'm currently also going to be taking the certified Cicerone as well coming up.
We may gonna do the same day.
Yes, I hope so. I think yours might be in London though. They have one up here as well. So yeah, then I went from, yeah, pretty much working behind the bar. I did another role, which they call sales activist, which basically allowed me to kind of go around a lot of the other bars in Aberdeen and shout about BrewDog beer to them, have them connect. I also did some sort of events and marketing with the bar as well. So in general, as well as my BeerSage Insta, I would say these are some of I've done a lot of like brewery sort of tours as well, which has been fantastic. Shout out to Fierce Beer in Aberdeen as well. Up and coming, still smashing it, both of them. Some great collaborations. But yeah, that's pretty much my experience.
I remember very well that we met when I was actually sipping from a sourdough bottle, the 2.8%. Do you remember that beer, right?
I do. I remember this night in particular, and I remember it because this was back when I was growing my collection of lambic beers.
Yep.
So I knew that down in London, they would do this thing. Down in London, they weren't as aware that beers could age. So they would have the older beers and also the newer beers all in the same. And basically all the old beers would be at the back. So you'd go down to like a London tap room, you'd go into their beer fridge, and you'd just, for pretty much the same price, be able to get like a 6-year-old beer.
I remember that. Yeah. Well, you know, I have to be naughty today a bit because I had to go for a double IPA.
Oh, nice.
Which I really wanted to try, this drop project from long time, which is a massive double dry hop double IPA with Simcoe, Citra, Zaka, and Mosaic, apparently. You know, thinking about, and I'm drinking a beer that some people will call DDHNEDIPA, it almost makes me feel.
That was a long name. Sorry, would you be able to...
Double dry hop New England double IPA. I mean, seriously?
At some point, it must get confused, you know? But what about yourself? Have you had your first sip yet?
Well, I'm telling you, first of all, cheers.
Cheers.
And I've been since Mother Kelly's has been a long journey because I went to a bottle shop called Clapton Craft. Since then I was helping the guys that are connected right now from Aura Brewing, which is modern brewery inspired by, you know, the Italian culinary heritage. There was a great experience. Then recently with London Fields, has been 2 years so far. So an interesting project between actually Carlsberg and Brooklyn. So interesting collaboration, checking two very, you know, important ways to understand the beer world, which is from a scientific point of view, you know, the lab, then they have up to, you know, Denmark, and in the other side, America. So Brooklyn Brewery, Gary Oliver, all of that. So it's, for me, every single time I'm talking about beer, I want to understand if it's a style or if it's a phenomena or if it's a trend, fully what's behind that, you know? And for me, thinking about, there are people that are just drinking this stuff.
Yeah.
Something that probably your dad or my dad will consider fruit juice.
Yeah.
Ribena, you know?
It's very true. It's very true. Back in those days, certainly there weren't beers really that looked very much like this.
Do you know
what do you think then? Would you say? I mean, double IPA, I think it's possibly gone past a trend now.
There has been a trend for sure, and the trend was helped by few elements. I think the generation of drinkers right now are the same people that were collecting comics, video games, toys. So giving constantly brand new things, limited edition things, which is pretty much the same beer, don't make me wrong.
Yeah.
But stronger, hoppier, juicier. These are all terms than people that are between subcultures like the gaming or the comics love.
Yeah.
The problem is, if you go that far, then you're losing the original element, which is beer as a way to spend your time, beer as a good way to enrich your evening experience or your friends. So I'm here to try to understand from people that are into the industry, what is their opinion about it. So this is pretty much mine. Like, it's a phenomena, is still working somehow, but it can't go further than this. We reached the bottom line.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think that's an interesting question. And just to sort of clarify on the question, it is whether or not something like a double IPA has that longevity to be able to constantly adapt, almost like a musician. So I think within that regard, you know, there's always going to be those four main ingredients And then you're really going to think about, you know, which one of those can I change? Which can I bring in something new? You know, things like spruce have been added to a lot of different beers as well. Foraged herbs. These are ways, a lot of even IPAs you're looking at, you know, sour IPAs you're looking at. So they've definitely done a lot already. It's a difficult question for me because double IPAs, being honest, although I like a, you know, very strong beer, haven't always been my favorite. So I've always felt they've been a little bit limited in terms of what, just that they've been restricted at times, you know, in terms of that flavor profile, in terms of what I feel I can get out of a double IPA.
Is it maybe because you are more a fan of one of the other four elements, perhaps yeasts rather than hops?
Yes. So it's not only the yeast, but it's also the malt as well. Because if you look at things like quadruples, if you look at even some of the, I guess some of the bruns, some of the doubles or doubles, you know, because my passion really began with Belgian beers, and then it started to diversify. And I found some other styles that I started to appreciate, but a lot of them were the more traditional styles, you know? So like English pales, and, you know, they were like those old sort of styles that you would have to really kind of search for rather than new, modern, and, you know, punchy. So I tend to focus more so on things that are either high ABV, really, really good malt bill, or really unique in terms of their sourness, you know. So I like more so the lambic, you know. People tend to just use Brettanomyces as a term they throw out there, but for me, it's not so much specifically that yeast strain as it is, I like the style of, you know, using a cool ship. I like the story behind yeast just somehow magically floating and fermenting a beer. So I think for me, there was always that element. And then I think you hit on the other element, which is, you know, what type of environment does it create? What type of space, you know? And I think that's one of the journeys that we go on with beer, is that we are able to sort of decide what journey generally we want through beer. And I think that if you're looking at sour beers, if you're looking at, you know, high ABV, darker, you know, richer, I feel like there's a little bit more variety for me, you know, in terms of I can move through different stages, you know, through different sournesses, through onto, you know, good bruns, you know. Whereas with my double IPA, I know what I'm getting. I know it, you know, and I know it throughout the evening as well. And at some point, I'd stop and drink something different. So
when I was working behind the bar, I used to receive these questions from the hop heads, the people that were into, you know, very hoppy beers. They were constantly asking me which of your beer on draft today, that it could have been 20 if I was on Mother Kelly's on that time, which is the most intense, which is the one that gives you the highest level of experience. And I was telling them, why are you looking for this beer? What is the actual reason? Because you asking me this, because I saw you 5 times and you asked me the same question. And it could have been like the month after or 2 months after, and they were always being into the same question. Is ticking a box, is checking out, is untapped the beer, is a possession. You know, I own it because I try it. And this makes me go to the highest level of my rank. I'm now better than before because I did it. I had it. What's the next? Straight away, we're one after is, what's next?
Yeah.
When me and you, I'm sure we can spend an entire evening sipping a 2.8% easily funked beer because it gives us pleasure.
Okay. I have to say, I love the thought. I love the process. I myself would begin. I could begin. And depending on what I was doing, I believe I would have to be doing some real exercise to be able to drink a 2.5 for the rest of an evening. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, very
If we
quickly.
want to.
But I certainly get what you mean. You know, it's one thing that I've found, and on the other hand, I'm a little bit wary of, I guess, you know, othering in that sense of they drink for the sake of newness. You know, because newness is really what I feel a lot of it is. Is it new? Have I had it? You know, how many other people have had it? And for me, that's never been the case. I've never been interested in that. Newness doesn't appeal to me. Oldness, actually, you know, rarity, that was always how I thought. But at the same time, the reason that I'm wary of othering is only because, not saying that you are at all, but is because I see them as two sides of the same coin. You know, they're looking for new, I'm looking for the oldest. And they're looking to drink it, I'm looking to keep it, you know? So I have those people come up to me and they'll be like, oh, have you had this beer? And I'll be like, yeah, I have actually. And then I'll be like, oh, I've actually got a bottle of, you know, like Udgoose 2011, you know, maybe Hanson's. And they'll be like, oh yeah, I've had that. And I'm like, oh, do you still have it? And so I always feel old, you know, in my opinion, can win over new, because at the end of the day, there's something about, and actually I'd put this to you. I went to Sweden, Stockholm, and there is a bar there that has one of the largest collections of vintage Belgian beer. I'll have to remember their name by the end of this conversation and shout them out, because
Please.
They also have an elevator that you can travel down. So you travel down this elevator, it has 2 different levels below it. They have a glassed out room where they then have stacked all of the beers, and it's basically just a tasting room. And then the other level is just a smaller version of that with rarer beers. But I'll have to remember the name. But yeah.
How does it work? Like, you go down there and then you like, can I have that? Can I have that? Can I have
Pretty
that?
much. So it's quite, they're quite careful in terms of, you know, with most craft beer bars. And that's the thing, you know it. When you walk into a craft beer bar, especially if it's like a local, you know, like Aberdeen, there's not many that if you don't walk in and you know people, you know, you're just, especially if you're in the industry, you're going to know people. And there, actually, I think I had mentioned I'd worked in the industry, and I already knew about this place downstairs as well. So I was not leaving there without visiting. And the guys were just nice enough to, take me down. And then I got like, I can't remember when that, I think it was 98. So it was like 1990. Yeah, it was delicious. And it was an old barley wine. I think it might have been Founders. I'm not even sure. But yeah, it was barley wine and it was delicious. And I just sat there and enjoyed it. I can't remember the name. If anyone does know, just message
Write
or
it down.
something like, yeah, because it's very well known.
Well, you know, in the same time, you're not just talking about like an approach to this type of beers that is recommended. It's a necessity, because if you really want to get the best out from double IPAs heavily hopped, you must drink them as soon as they leave the brewery.
Yes. Yeah.
If you're talking about these all funk special products with, you know, the beauty of having crazy yeasts inside, the longest you put them on the side, more you'll be rewarded. So it's not even close. They are the opposite strategy, the opposite point of view, the opposite philosophy to the element of beer, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's very true, actually. And I think that's a great point, because earlier on you mentioned about, you know, which of those ingredients was your favorite. And I think hops, hops are massively, massively popular, you know? And again, if you start off with the Belgian side, it's all about balance.
Yep.
So they're not looking for overarching hop character, you know? So if your palate is brought up on that, it's very difficult, you know? One of the BrewDog's like most well-known famous beers is Jackhammer.
Yep.
And the whole idea of it is hardcore, essentially, hops, you know? And it's done very well. So there certainly is a large group of people that absolutely love hoppy beers.
And if you give a rank double X beer to someone, you describe this beer as a very hoppy Belgian IPA. But then the hop heads that are going through this would consider that beer as mild as a German Pils, probably.
Yeah.
In terms of level of hoppiness. And this is like, you know, this is mad. And a question that I have for you is, because you're working in tech as well, and I know how geeky the tech heads could go, I almost feel like then, you know, the new iPhone release, it is perceived by the beerhead, you know, it's perceived by the tech heads as much as the new double IPA from Holder Half is perceived.
True. Is that a New York brewery?
Yep, the one with the two circles.
Ah, yes.
Could be Cloudwater. Could be Cloudwater if you prefer. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's the thing, you know. It's like, would you really queue hours and hours to get a third of a very boozy beer, would probably taste like the one that you had last week, and also spending a lot?
I think it's an interesting question. So when I would, and to clarify, there are comparisons. There are comparisons, certainly. The excitement that people feel when a new beer comes out and they're able to be part of something, because the craft beer movement, you know, is very much like the tech revolution. You know, it was something to be a part of. It is something to be a part of. And it's always developing and growing. You know, there's always something new coming very soon to a bar, a shop near you. And there's going to be other people there, possibly people that you see often, you know. And with craft beer, I think it's never too expensive, it would seem, you know. Like, prices do tend to go up sometimes, but generally people will come in and they will want. They will want to. I would say there are some similarities between the two, you know. But mainly on that, there is a sense of definitely ownership once you are in that space and drinking that beer and you're experiencing that with multiple people. That's why people become, in a sense, it's one of their regular places to go. You know?
It does make sense totally. It really does. And you know, man, again, when we met on that night in Mother Kelly's, you know, we had a brilliant conversation because we really wanted to spend that time that we had enjoying ourselves, chatting, and you know, I was curious to hear who you were and why you were enjoying that specific style of beer. Then you've been very nice in telling me what was your interest, what was your role within the industry. But you wanted to spend time not sitting there and tapping the beer, you know. But it seems more and more and more the loneliness, and unfortunately, in the reality that we live right now, drinking at home alone is a thing. You You don't need any more people. You don't need any more pubs. You don't need anything. You just got your beer, go on Tapped, just put a photo on Instagram. You'll be fine. 100 people's gonna like it. And I'm like, okay, fair. And I'm sure there are people doing the similar thing to sour beer, like the collectors, the label collectors. But hopheads are different. Hopheads are much more into the hype.
True.
Definitely.
I agree with you. I think it's interesting because that initial group that you described, that is me. I am a collector, you know, so for me, and this is probably when I met you as well, it was never really about, it wasn't about newness. That's the number one thing. It wasn't about newness, and it wasn't about drinking for the sake of tasting it, you know? I enjoyed tasting new beers. I did not enjoy buying new beers that I did not like, you know? I would certainly try new beers, and I would, you know, sometimes, if necessary, diversify my palate if it came to things like, you know, actually studying. But there were beers that I liked and wanted to taste, and I would hunt and seek them out, and then I would keep them as a collector and see how they would taste in a few years' time. Or for very special occasions, I would actually save them, and then, you know, when friends were around, I would, you know, be able to enjoy that moment.
Sharing, enjoy the moment. You say it.
Yeah, certainly. There was a synchronicity between, I guess, having a specific beer, you know. Also, some of the sizes of these beers. Like, I've got a beer that's like a 1.5. I'm not drinking that by myself. I've tried. No, I haven't. But I'm not going to drink that by myself. So there's some beers that just aren't made for that size. But I agree with you. It is something. I think lockdown has been a bit different for people, you know. People are going to be drinking by themselves sometimes. And I think we all have to be a little bit easier on ourselves to, you know, allow ourselves, I guess, to have a beer by ourselves here and there. But certainly when things are back to normal, I think people will be out there. They'll be back, you know, in the bars, socializing, probably as quick as possible.
I really hope so, because that's another, you know, point is for me, the entire beer culture is made on sharing, is made on going to pubs and bars, and you know, breweries probably realized, and they can keep making some, you know, income, selling beers on e-commerce and things like that. But no, it's going to be missed, and a really important place, a really important sharing spot, and you know, I reckon that one of the reasons, because beer, instead of different, you know, drinks like probably wine or spirits, has been around in this form for so long, is because the entire experience around it makes it very, very sociable. And you know, I didn't ask you, like, a main question, which is, why did you get into craft beer? Because that will be the answer for what we say now. Why did you get into it?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was certainly, it's been 6 years. So when I think back, so prior to working at 6 Degrees, I worked at a cocktail bar. Shout out to the Tippling House, actually. That's another one of my favourite Aberdeen places. And then I moved to 6 Degrees, and I think it was the sense of community. It wasn't just the beer. I think also there was something quite relaxed but refined. You know, I liked the fact that I didn't feel under pressure to be anybody, or to dress a certain way, or to, you know, like, there wasn't the pretentiousness that you find. And some people say there is, you know, in the industry, they say, you know, some people are a little bit more headstrong. But for me, if you compare it to certain things like, you know, certain restaurants, if you're going for wine, or bars, if you're going for cocktails, you know, also the price point as well. You know, I got to a stage where I was paying like £10 for a cocktail, and I was just like, this is, you know, and then I was having a beer, you could sit there, you could really, you know, take your time with it as well. It wasn't like a rushed activity. You could discuss. So I feel like it was the sense of community, you know, that it does create, drinking a beer in comparison to, you know, even a glass of wine where maybe I'm feeling a little bit more tipsy, quicker, or, you know, gin or anything of the kind. I think beer just fits my sort of pace as well, you know, for me.
Something that I noticed since we met, and I may gonna touch something that maybe some people don't want to touch, but I think we have to touch all sorts of things if we're doing it in the right way. It was the fact that you are a man with a background that I normally don't find in this industry. And you mentioned before the Caribbean and roots that you have. The you say Ivorian, am I wrong?
Sierra Leone.
Sierra Leone. So
yeah.
You know, it's like I have friends in London which have, you know, I know Moritz from Colonel, for example, it does have you know, Swedish roots and Caribbean roots. So I always chat about these things because we tend to see homogeneity within the craft beer and in terms of, you know, genders, and like pretty much we're all male, and ethnicity, or if you prefer background, you know, is pretty much like in UK probably is white British. If you go to Italy, I will probably reckon it will be most like Italian, from, you know, Italian parent, things like that. So I'm like, it's been an interesting decision for someone that liked the liquid as well to also be an active party from long time, which I'm sure, like in the UK, it's fine because we are in a society which is really advanced. But in the same time, I'm sure you ask yourself these questions like, are there any other, you know, people with my similar background within the industry? And if you did that, did you find many?
So the very simple answer is no.
Okay.
Within the industry, I think there's a lot of elements that you have to sort of think about. I think pretty much most of what you said is correct. The majority, yes, would be not so much people of color or people from BAME backgrounds. Generally, they are male, and quite a lot are Caucasian.
Yep.
I've always been someone myself who has not always been the one in the sort of circle of the popular kids, you know? I've never been that person that gravitates to the, you know, the norm. I've always gravitated a little bit more to the alternative. Craft beer is still the alternative, you know? In a way, it may not be, you know, there might be some sort of, I guess, spirits and, you know, wine that maybe have a little bit more of a diverse, essentially, market customer. But they are, you know, they're very sort of ingrained in popular society, you know, whereas craft beer in particular is still sort of on the fringes in some senses. You know, it's being accepted, but there's places where people still won't know, you know, won't know maybe where the brewery's from, maybe won't know that that style of beer is, you know, dissimilar to one that's the same color, or that dark beers can actually be sweet as well. And what I like about that is that it's always allowed me the freedom to be myself. It has been difficult in terms of sometimes working in the industry, because prior to that, I was talking about more so being a customer, you know, as a customer coming from London as well, you know, I came from a melting pot. So it's generally less diverse up here anyway, just in terms of population and, you know, how many. I think black people are 0.7% in Scotland, in comparison to, I think it's like, I can't even remember what it is in London, but it's a lot more.
Yeah.
So there's that element, but then there's also the element of working in the industry, which is different. And working is how many people of color do you see, or BAME, who work in the industry, and not many is that answer. That was also the same for cocktail, you know. I find that I'm generally one of the few that I meet. And it can be sometimes, you know, a little bit difficult to share certain ideas, you know, because you do blend your background and your culture with whatever you're doing. You know, so if you're a craft beer lover, then when I get home and I'm listening to craft beer, I'm drinking craft beer, I'm listening to maybe, you know, different type of music. Maybe I'm listening to some hip hop. Maybe I'm listening to, I don't listen to jazz. I wanted to say jazz. I don't listen to jazz. I wish I did. I had a lot more credibility. But yeah, if I was listening to some hip hop, then, you know, that's something that I won't find if I go into a craft beer bar.
Right.
I mean, in the ones that in the ones that I've been, especially up here, you know, and possibly in certain other ones. So I guess in a way, it's the blending of the two that hasn't yet, for me, really, you know, taken hold.
Can I say you haven't found them yet going together?
Yes, exactly. I do know there's some in America. I think Crown and Hops, actually, shout out to them. They're going to be doing amazing. They came to the BrewDog AGM, and yeah, you know, I met them there. They're great. But generally, I have found it's sometimes difficult, because what I think people want to do when they work in industry is to be able to look upwards and see people like themselves, you know, so that they can aspire. And that sometimes is a little bit more difficult, you know. But generally, I do find that craft beer being more on the alternative side, actually, it's not as rigid, you know. I also find that there is a space now becoming available, I think, you know.
There is, because the craft beer, drinking craft beer in a tap room is not drinking beer in a pub. They are very, very distinct things. When I say drinking beer in a pub, like generic beer in a generic pub, that's not me. Even if I'm doing it, I know I'm feeling as a guest, because I'm not acting in the same way that most of the people around me. I don't know the rules. Even if I know the rules, I don't want to feel like I want to fit in the rules. So I'm trying to get potentially more in the places that I mentioned, like tap rooms, where I can drink a specific type of beer, because I know there is a different element, which is we're here to make, you know, the culture of craft beer here together, without having someone telling me, oh, this is the culture of craft beer, follow it. No, we are there making it, building it, like modeling it. And that's what I like. So sometimes I think that double IPA and big heavy hoppy beers are a way to almost give privileged people, don't worry too much about talking with the people around them in a craft beer bar as they normally would do, and instead spending very, very high, expensive money to drink something and they will talk for a couple of days on Instagram.
Yeah.
So they don't have to think about the rest, and they can act as much as they were 12 in a comic shop or in front of the PlayStation. Maybe. Because in a craft beer bar, you have to
just to try to understand that one as well, would you be able to explain just a little bit more? Terms of...
You know, it's like every time you give something to people, something that really work.
Yeah.
There is always a way to turn, shift, and modify something that is authentically original into something that is based just on money, just on commercialization. Because beer is such a very unique thing, the only way to destroy this gift that someone gave to us, then can make us very sociable, can make us very happy, can make us very open, is to make that elitarian, is to make that for the few, creating a tribe into the tribe, which is better than the rest of the tribe because they are spending the money, they are going deeper.
Interesting, yeah.
You know,
Interesting.
This is against what we normally should do when we are meeting up with a beer in hand. And I noticed it because, you know, I was working in all of these places and the people were like, can I get this? You were putting them in a bag. They were giving you the money. Leave, go home, and talking about it.
Yeah.
But I'm like, come in a second here. Telling me why you buy this. Tell me what you feel like. With what would you pair it? Tell me everything about this lovely passion that you have. No. I have to go home. I have to leave. I don't want to talk with you. You're scary, you know? I was just like, I suppose this is craft beer. This is not Tesco, right? What's going on? You know?
I can certainly understand that. And working in the industry, I agree with you. That does certainly happen. We meet many, many people, and some are willing to stay and, you know, are really passionate about the beers. And some genuinely just want the beer to say that they, you know, have had the beer. This does seem to be the case with a lot of different products and things. People just will be like, yeah, you know, like Pokemon cards, let's just collect them. You know, I used to collect the cards. I never played the game. You know, that's probably, it's probably, yeah, like an example that makes sense to me.
But then you grew up.
Yeah, but at the same time, I have a, you know, vintage collection, and it's only been like over the last year, over lockdown, that I've sort of been making my way through them, you know. So I think there is something of freedom in saying enjoy. And also I would say to you, and this is an interesting one, because I think you really hit on something that I hadn't thought about prior, was the idea of the price point, you know. And them going up. You know, for a while, I actually thought to myself that would be a good idea, you know, for the industry. Because at the end of the day, you want to elevate the industry, you know. And when you look at it, you look at wine and you go, look at the reputation wine has, look what they're able to charge. You know, we've got 15% beers. You're talking about, you know, a bottle of wine for 15, and you're talking about like £1,000. I mean, why isn't beer seen in the same way? And this was for a long time, I think, when I met you, you know, because there are beers that are the, what do they call them? The red wine of the beer world.
Yep.
You know? All of it very much so without the sort of credibility that we give to wine. And a lot of that is probably to do with the price point, because those same people that are coming in and buying those beers are the same people that if the beer went up the price, they would think they had something more, you know, and that leaves a place for people who know about craft beer and want to enjoy craft beer, but don't need it to be a high price to go and buy good beer at a low price, you know. So I think variety is the spice of life that I would always, you know, say. And in that sense, you know, there has to be people that do want to just buy the newest stuff, you know?
And for as much you pay for your bottle of a vintage, and for as much you craving to have that bottle of a vintage, I will still see you doing a very, very different action than someone who's, you know, queuing in front of the next big thing brewery for the sake of going mad with it. Because again, it's very likely that you will share the beer, because that's the way that you're doing things. That's the way that you like to, you know, experience there. And because you're here to talk about this matter with someone, and instead of maybe someone that is super into hazy New England, wherever, and they'll be like, well, you know, again, I think I'm gonna go home. I have to drink my freshest Northern Monk, or you know, wherever. So I still getting a much more genuinity on and getting around there, and you know,
authenticity. I feel you're working towards as well. And if you look at some of the longest opening breweries, you know, some of them are also in Belgium. And so you think about it and you look at Belgian culture, and it's very much sort of cafe culture as well. You know, so for instance, I think actually the glass that you had is possibly a Teku. I think they're actually Italian designed originally. So you look at a glass like that, and that's actually one of my favorite glasses. I will shout out very quickly to, it is 6 Degrees North, it's Midsummer Beer Festival, but this is officially my favorite glass. So it's very similar to a Teku, but slightly, but these are the little things that people get into. Belgians, for instance, massive into their glassware to pair with their, you know, whatever the beer is that they've just bought. But I think that's one of the things that I find to be different, you know. You look at a Teku, you're drinking from a stemmed glass. Not everyone wants to drink from a stemmed glass, you know. And if you look at the sort of culture of the area as well, and you think about the UK maybe in comparison to Belgium or maybe even Italy or places like this, you think to yourself, it's different, but it's hard to get a grip on whether one is, you know, better or worse in that sense. You know, America will have a completely different culture as well, you know, and in some senses, when you look at where America's drinking of beer has come from to where it is now, you know, variety is great, the beers are better, you know, there's no corn based, well, there are, we all know they're still there, you know, making the money. I actually, and this is going to be, this sort of harks back to a point you made earlier, and the point you made earlier was it was in relation to sort of diversity, but this is a bit random, just to throw it out there.
Oh, please.
So I was watching a documentary. Obviously, this is quite a, you know, there's been a lot in the news, and I was watching a documentary on the apartheid in South Africa. And during the apartheid, they would have pubs that were government funded open, and a lot of the black citizens would go and drink in these, and what they would give for free to these black citizens was low, this is how they described it, low ABV light beer made from corn. And I was like, it made me think to myself, you know, that's like Budweiser. That's like, you know, they're basically serving, like, it was a surreal moment, because in that moment I knew to myself, I thought to myself, this is a very difficult period of time. This is, you know, and the government, I couldn't really put my head around it. But what I did think was that these people that were being oppressed by a government and were then given beer, the beer they were given was a corn-based light beer. It's
interesting, the fact that you you know, that specific beer has been proposed to the entire American, Brazilian, probably African, apart from the part that you can find in this strong export.
Which
Thailand,
is delicious, by the way.
which is the real stuff. But you know, I'm thinking like that's a punishment. That's really much a punishment, and that's why someone like Gary Oliver, that we mentioned before, he was like craft beer in America, and maybe I just don't know, but maybe in South Africa as well, is a comeback to normality when some English, German, or Belgian style beers were exported in these places by brewers that knew the techniques and how to make these beers in a different environment with a different climate situation for the pleasure of drink what they used to drink at home. And of course, you can create fantastic lagers with corn. Maybe, I don't know, potentially, like Mexican lager. Someone say to me, but in the other hand, we know what we're talking about when we say corn-based beverage.
Yes.
Not appealing. Definitely not appealing.
No.
So,
it's the lack of flavor, unfortunately. Yeah.
That's part of the game. When you're forced to touch the lowest level of the ladder, well, you know, someone is gonna be like, enough. We're now changing this, and I'm scared that someone is giving big hoppy beers to the mass to let them forget that there is so much to explore over a single ingredient in a single style, instead of let them dip very hard on it. So, you know, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but too many people fall in love with this stuff. And look the amount of people that get into weed in these days that never smoked before, just in time where the government make it fucking, you know, free.
Yeah. Wait, where is this? Sorry, where are we talking of? Not in the UK.
Well, you know, look in America. I mean, you now can go in places and get a double IPA and a spliff. Yeah. And I'm thinking, like, interesting. You are making an entire part of it. I mean, this is super conspiracy, but hey, you know, we're almost at the end.
I guess I started it, but that was historical. Okay, I watched that. I saw it happen. I saw them pour this light liquid, and when I heard that phrase, I thought to myself,
Budweiser.
Wow. Yeah. I do have to say, it's saying 1 minute 30 remaining. Do you know?
You see what he said?
Yeah.
Right. Let me put it this way. We now know that we can speak forever.
Yes, indeed.
I can't wait to see you, hug you, and drink whatever you want to drink and enjoy our, you know, experience. And all I'm asking you is, whenever you're going to say to you to save the video, please save it so we keep this beauty, you know?
Okay, how do you do that? How would you?
When you're gonna press end, it's gonna say to you, share on IGTV, so the Instagram TV. It's gonna stay there, so we can both download it and keep it for as much as we want.
Amazing, amazing. What we could do, actually, no, we don't have time, but hopefully another time as well.
We're gonna make it the other side. And man, I really love you. I can't wait to